I met with Mr. Depp, the purpose of which was to share with him the results of our findings and to make recommendations on how he could resolve the issues he was confronting.
When was that meeting?
That meeting was on April 21st, 2016.
Who called the meeting?
I did. I called the meeting because I felt it was appropriate to meet with Mr. Depp and to discuss his affairs and to provide him with opportunities and plans and strategies to resolve the issues he was confronting.
Where was the meeting held?
It was held at his offices in Los Angeles, California.
Do you know approximately what time it began?
It began at approximately 7:30, and my recollection is there were 7 people in attendance, including Mr. Depp and myself.
Was alcohol served at the meeting?
Not to my recollection. I don't recall any alcohol being consumed.
Did Mr. Depp stay for the entirety of the meeting?
Oh, yes. He was very interested in the contents. He asked very thoughtful questions. He was fully engaged and fully sensitive to the matters that we were discussing.
Did there come a time when Mr. Depp didn't participate in the meeting?
No, he was very actively involved. He did excuse himself on 2 or 3 occasions. It was my understanding that he was going to contact Ms. Heard and attempt to respond to her concerns and also address the fact that this was an extremely important meeting and that it involved his financial viability and that he felt it imperative to stay and address the issues I was discussing with him.
When did the meeting conclude?
At approximately 9:30. So it went for approximately 2 hours.
At the conclusion of the meeting, what did you observe as to Mr. Depp?
That he was fully engaged once again. He thanked me profusely for not only addressing the problems, but he was excited about the fact there was a strategy and plan to resolve the problems.
Did he appear impaired to you in any way?
No, to the contrary, I found him to be...
I'm sorry, sir, there was an objection. What was the objection, sorry? Leading?
Just I asked him for his observation as an impairment.
Well, if you want to ask different, I'll sustain that objection, but you can ask another question.
Did you make any observations as to Mr. Depp's potential impairment?
It was readily apparent to me that he was actively involved in the conversation. He asked very thoughtful and prudent questions. He was genuinely interested, and once again, when he left, he thanked me profusely for not only addressing the issues, but formulating a strategy and plan to resolve them in a successful manner.
Did you play any role on Mr. Depp's behalf with respect to the dissolution of his marriage to Ms. Heard?
Yes, I was actively involved in the negotiations of the separation and the marriage dissolve.
What role did you play in those negotiations?
Well, in my capacity as his business manager, I understood his financial capacity and the tax implications associated with it. So I was actively involved in addressing those issues as they were forthcoming from counsel.
You mentioned tax implications. What are you talking about there?
Excuse me?
I think you just mentioned tax implications. What are you talking about there?
Well, what I was talking about is that when Ms. Heard began the negotiations, she was asking for approximately $4 million. That
Objection,
balance
Your Honor.
then was
Foundation,
increased.
Hearsay. Lack of foundation. Hearsay.
These are requests made by Ms. Heard and her counsel in a conversation, in communications.
Here, you want to approach for a minute?
Certainly. As a result of your involvement on behalf of Mr. Depp in the negotiation, what was your understanding of what Ms. Heard was looking for?
She initially was looking for a consideration of $4 million, but her demand continually increased. It went from $4 million to $5 million. Then it went from $5 million to $5.5 million. Then it went to $7 million. And then it was $7 million, and she demanded that Mr. Depp also pay $500,000 to her attorneys. Then, after that consideration, she also said that all the community liabilities that were accumulated
Objection,
during the
Your
course of the
Honor.
marriage, which approximated
Sorry, there's
$13.5
an
million.
objection, sir. Whenever there's an objection, I'm sorry. If you can't hear it, I'll let you know. Okay?
thank you, Your
Yeah, no
This
problem,
just
sir.
goes into his allegations of what she said, which Your Honor just instructed, sustain the objection on that. He has no foundation to suggest that. No knowledge of that.
Your Honor, I understand that. I asked his understanding.
All right, I'll overrule the objection. Go ahead.
May I continue?
She'll tell you yes.
Yes. Go ahead, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
He learns very well.
So the next demand was that all of the community liabilities that were unresolved, approximately $13.5 million, that Mr. Depp had to pay those liabilities in its entirety. So at that point, she was demanding $14,250,000 of consideration, and then it got worse. The next demand was that all of this consideration be paid to her free of taxation. And counselor, for him to pay $14,250,000 to Miss Heard, that would require him to earn approximately
Objection, Your Honor.
$30
This
million.
is so far beyond the scope, so far beyond his foundation of what was discussed.
All right, I'll sustain that last answer. All right. Next question.
Did you make a proposal as to how payments would be made to Ms. Heard?
Yes, I did, and they were initially contemplated to be paid directly to the charities, the Children's Hospital Los Angeles, for the benefit of the children who required severe medical service, and to the ACLU. During the course of the negotiations, one of the demands, because the contract changed, was that the payments be made directly to Ms. Heard.
Did you have any personal involvement with either the ACLU or the Children's Hospital?
Yes, I did.
What was that?
Mr. Depp directed me to issue two $100,000 checks directly to the Children's Hospital Los Angeles. I knew that he was involved and supported their efforts and appreciated his service. In addition to that, he directed me to contribute $100,000 to ACLU. In accordance with his instructions, my colleagues drafted the checks, I executed them, and they were delivered to the two charities.
Did you continue making payments to either of those charities on Ms. Heard's behalf?
No, in fact, I was chastised for making the payments by Ms. Heard's counsel and told that the payments in the future had to go
Objection, Your
directly
Honor.
to her.
This is clear hearsay. He's not answering the question. I would ask for you to instruct him to answer the question and not expound upon his.
I'll sustain as to hearsay. Next question.
What role did you play with respect to the payments ultimately made to Ms. Heard?
We supplied the payments to Ms. Heard in accordance with the agreement, either on or before the date in which they were required to be paid. The first payments made to Ms. Heard was $2 million in 2017. Then in April of 2017, another payment of $1 million made payable directly to Ms. Heard was made. Then in August of 2017, another $1 million was paid directly to Ms. Heard. Then in November, $500,000 was paid directly to Ms. Heard. My colleagues drafted those checks, I executed them, they were delivered on a timely basis. Therefore, in 2017, she was paid $4.5 million directly paid to her. Then on February 1 of 2018, she was paid the final installment of $2.3 million for total payments that went directly to Ms. Heard of $6.8 million.
Do you know when this lawsuit was filed?
Yes, it was filed in March 1, 2019.
Were the payments that were made on Mr. Depp's behalf directly to Ms. Heard the only economic benefit she received?
Objection leading.
I haven't heard the, go, I'll overrule the objection for us now. Go ahead.
Were the payments made on to Ms. Heard the only economic benefits that she received from the settlement agreement?
No, as I shared with you earlier, Mr. Depp was required to pay $500,000 to Ms. Heard's counsel, which he did in a timely and respectful manner. He was also required to pay all the community liabilities, which accumulated during their 15-month marriage, was approximately $13,500,000. So he paid all the community liabilities. She paid none of them. That's why you have to aggregate the money that was paid directly to her, the money that was paid to her, to the charities on her behalf, the money that was paid to her attorneys, and the relief of all these liabilities that he had to satisfy. That's why I said to you, Counselor, that the total consideration paid to her was $14,250,000, and she demanded that that payment be made free of taxation, that Mr. Depp would have to satisfy all the tax liabilities.
How long were they married for?
They were married for 15 months.
Okay. Were the payments that went to Ms. Heard the only payments that you've made on Mr. Depp's behalf?
No, we satisfied all of his obligations, so it was